from the outside of the industry, it looks like one thing, like, oh my gosh, this game is being talked about everywhere. But on the inside, kind of looking out, looking at the financials, whatever, we actually don't push as many copies as a lot of people think. People think it's sort of like gold rushy mentality. Somebody thought that I was a millionaire because Adam made Cannonball. God bless that human, because that's not the case. Over a decade, it probably has done $1 million in revenue, probably, and we spent every penny on that making new stuff. So indie games is not a gold rush. You might get lucky, you might get struck by lightning, but really you have to plan on being sustainable. How can you make another game if you only sell a few copies? Especially when you think about how indie games are made. Even on Overland, all of my developers have revenue share on like the game when it comes out. So percentages are going off everywhere. So how much do I actually have access to? Hundreds, which was one of our last iOS titles, actually did phenomenally well. It charted in everything, basically. But it didn't actually pay for much beyond the development costs, which is why we got out of mobile game development in 2013. Because it could make $300,000, but if you took 2 years to make it, you didn't pay for your costs for a team of 4 that all have families. The majority of games on Steam, especially, are in those first two. They sell 300 to 3,000 copies. And if you do some math on that, that's not a lot of money. All of our Finji budgets for every game that we make are based on 30,000 copies, because I historically know that I can push that many copies of something. We hope that we sell the next one up, which is 300,000 copies, which we have done. We don't even talk about that end one, and we have friends who do those numbers, but we don't ever plan on that. But my budgets allow for me to do phenomenally bad for one of our games. 30,000, like all of my lowest selling copies have done at least 30,000 copies. And that's just because we bang a lot of pots up and down our streets. The first thing I'm going to talk a little bit about when we talk to teams, there's a misconception about what a prototype is versus a vertical slice versus a gameplay mechanic. And we toss around these terms a lot, and you can just see like the glassy eyes sort of like glaze over, like, what's the difference? Like vertical slice and prototype, they must be the same thing. I can send a prototype to a publisher, right? It's like, well, no, actually don't, unless it's your friend or you've made 10 games before. If you don't have a history, a prototype is not that useful for a publisher. So when we talk about prototypes versus vertical slice, prototypes is not something you would actually ever send to me. I might ask for it later, like if we were actually in talks, but I don't want it, because I want to know how the end user is actually going to play your game. Now, there's this question, too, do publishers pay for prototypes? Which I get often, like, I have this great game idea. It's like, well, good, show me something. So we are actually playing on the show floor right now a very select part of Tunic's vertical slice. This is not, hey, build out the whole game, make it look amazing. It's take a 5 to 15-minute slice of the game and make it as good as you can at that moment. Polish it up a bit. Does the gameplay feel really good? Like, and at the end of it, do you, as a developer, want to play it more? And if you give it to somebody else, do they want to play it more? So people, especially when they talk about Tunic, they're like, yeah, the whole game takes place in this forest. It has this dappled light. There's like the cherry blossom boss. And it's like, Tunic's huge. There's so much more of this island, but we show you the vertical slice, because that's the part that we have a proof of concept. I can sit somebody down, I can get them through a demo as fast as possible, and when they leave, they know exactly what type of game they're going to get. And when you talk to a publisher, that's the idea you want to leave them with. So you have a vertical slice. Somehow you've managed to squeeze this together, you've polished up some game, you have audio, you have maybe even a little bit of music, and if you do voiceover, God bless you, you've somehow figured out voiceover and made it not sound completely horrible. And now you have to put together a pitch document. And this is usually referred to as a pitch deck when people ask for it. And you can actually use the versions of pitch decks across like all industries. So you work in sales, you work in marketing, you, are having to present anything at any point to somebody. That's a pitch deck. And in games, your pitch deck, we usually build them in Keynote, shouldn't have things in it that the other person knows more about than you. I get pitch decks that tell me I'm going to make $1 million because of sales on something, and the math is wrong because the revenue share is wrong. And in my brain, I'm just like, just leave the finances out. Like, I know what it's going to sell, probably. And that's my job. My job is to sell your game. Your job is to convince me that your game is awesome, because you know the most about it. So for Overland, we usually have like a splash page, which I didn't put up because I actually ripped this out of one of our pitch decks, and I would have had to actually change the confidential stuff that was on it. So I ignored the first page, but that first page is key art. So if you go to my booth out there, I have like the Overland sign. It has the girl with the flame and the car, and it has like Overland across it. That's my key art. That's my pitch deck front page. And it says the title and the studio. And that's it. It's a really compelling, beautiful thing, and we've put it into a keynote, which we've saved off into a PDF, and on it also says, who it's for. So co-marketing agreement for whatever console release on, pick a date out of your hat, year, whatever. But then there's only 5 pages to this, and there's not a ton of text on every page. Kind of the first page is what is Overland. This is all like really, really small, but it's basically our one sentence bolded, like, the elevator pitch, which is Overland is a post-apocalyptic turn-based survival strategy game as you travel across post-apocalyptic America. It's basically that. It's like, what genre, what's your gameplay mechanic, and where's the setting? And why do people care? Is all the first sentence. And then you can go into a little bit more detail. This is what you do. This is how you survive. This is how people are going to feel. And we do it in like 3 paragraphs. It's also part of our press kit. But what you don't want in a pitch document, and this is Adam's slide, and I love it so much because it's so true. Lies are super interesting, and the majority of what your game is about is absolute boring trash. Like, lore, trash. Don't ever put lore in a pitch document. You can talk about it internally all you want, or you can find somebody on a show floor who's like really into it. It's not me. Oh God, don't tell me lore. Tell me what's cool about your game and your mechanics. I've gotten a lot of lore over the years. And when we get like 10 minutes into like fairy theory and elven gods, I'm just like, I am lost. I can't even spell these names. I don't know what you're saying anymore. So you got to be very aware that lore is not interesting. What we want to know is, why is this rad? Why do I want to play this? Like, when I get that controller, what's sticky? It's not the lore. It's something else. It's something that's internal to humans. You really should do research before you contact a publisher. I get Android games like 4 a day. I'm not a mobile publisher. I have made mobile games, but right now, what is my last launch? Night in the Woods. What am I working on next? Overland. What's after that? Wilmot's Warehouse and Tunic. Like, I make big games on PC and console, and maybe I'll put something out on mobile after if I can make it work. I'm not an Android developer. I don't do free to play. I don't buy users, but I get these pitches every day. I have like probably 300 that I haven't even responded to in my pitch like file. I just save them off, and I'll run through like 5 to 6 a day of like, hey man, I don't do this. Hey girl, I don't do this. Like, I know who you're talking to. Know what kind of games we make. If you're making like a beat 'em up multiplayer something, why are you sending that to Annapurna? Why are you sending it to me? Man, you gotta be a Raw Fury, Devolver. You can even hit Good Shepherd, which is part of Devolver. Like, I am a bad publisher for that. So understand the games that I already have and sort of the things, you can tell what I look for based on what I'm already working on. And same thing with Annapurna, same thing with Raw Fury, same thing with Devolver, same thing with Panic, although they're kind of weird, just because they take on even less games than I do. But yeah, like, know what they're into. We all have Twitters. Like, we talk about the things that we're playing and the things that we like. So know what that is, and then ensure that we like it before you contact us. Don't stick lore in the email. Like, hey, Becca, I love your Twitter. You talk about your kids. It's really funny. I wanted to reach out because I really admire your work on whatever. Night in the Woods really touched my life. You can make it up. You can lie to me. It's fine. But write me an email that actually you know who I am. and everybody else. And then I made this thing. I think you'd like it. Do you want to play it? End of email. That's the one. Do you want to play it? It's not, do you want to publish it? The answer is no, I don't. I can answer that right in that email. But do I want to play it? Probably. Tell me a little bit about it. What's your pitch? That bolded line. Here's 3 things that are interesting about it. I think you'd like it because of this thing that I know about you. Send. And it might take me a month, sometimes 2, to get back to you because I get like 10 of these a day. But if I saw that email, I would forward it to Adam, who is the one who plays the games, and be like, hey man, do you want to see this? And he would be like, that looks interesting. Let me ping them back and see if they'd be interested in me doing a play test. And then Adam sends an email of feedback. And that's how we even get into mentoring. I mentored Tunic for 2 years before we pitched them on publishing. I didn't just like, oh, that's a cute Zelda fox. It was, I mentored his game. Adam mentored his game. I helped him find financing before we were even involved with it. And we told him then, you don't need a publisher. You're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And then we met up with him for mentorship and was like, oh God, we should probably find you some help because it's too big now. So we, and a lot of even the normal publishers, we want a relationship before we do business with. I get a lot of questions about how I pay for games, and that's like a totally valid thing. I'm not gonna sit up here and give you like my Finji financials. We have done an assortment of things over the years, including tons of turnkey stuff. I've done STEAM grants with universities. We did one with the University of Utah that ended last year after Night in the Woods even came out. We've done turnkey advertising with Old Spice, and we did something for the Hunger Games back in the day. We have done actually multiple educational projects, which are tangential to video games, so it doesn't like take up all of our mental space when we're designing sort of our more systemic creative stuff. We've built websites. We've taken on like an assortment of crazy, like just turnkey contract work over the years. And we built up that sort of Rolodex of contract stuff over like a decade. And it took Adam about 2 years to ramp it up. So if you're looking to go freelance, you're looking to go indie, the safest way is either to keep your job and make it a hobby, or spend 2 years, build up contract work, and then contract work and make indie games. Because you can build into your contract schedule time off, because you always say it's going to take twice as long than it actually does. And then you make sure you're paid for twice as long than it actually does. And Adam actually has, if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. We've got a bunch of like freelancer stuff. It's sort of in past blog posts. But for Finji, we build up, for years, we would build up war chests, that's what Adam called them, from our very large advertising contracts. And then we would see how far we could run with it. And I've emptied my bank account multiple times over the years. And right now, it's the first time in the history of us being independent, so since 2008, that I am subsisting entirely on past revenue of past releases. The first time in history. So that's like a decade that we contracted. And most people, nobody talks about that on the outside, but we 100% were doing multiple games at a time. While having kids, moving across the country. I funded part of 2016 on selling my house in Austin because it had appreciated so much. I bought a new one in Michigan, and I paid with 20% down. I did it real safely. I'm not crazy. I'm the most financially paranoid person alive. But I did it the right way, saving tons of money in Michigan. But I used the excess to fund me and Adam for 8 months because I was in between. Night in the Woods had gotten delayed. So I knew revenue was going to be delayed, so I needed to come up with a way to not have to borrow money. And it's better for it. But I did it in the safest way possible. So there's lots of creative ways to do this that are not putting things on credit cards, that are working contract positions, that are keeping just a real job. Don't go indie without financial stability. It will burn you down so fast, especially if you have a family or a house on the line. Always have backup plans.